Hello everyone, welcome to GS Score. So, in our series of daily current affairs through MCQ, where we talk about not just the coverage of current affairs through MCQs, but also we see the underlying concepts and most importantly, the skilling aspect, as in how to approach and the tools and techniques to follow. So let us quickly glance through the topics on which the questions of today are based. The relics of Buddha, which are on way to be displayed in Thailand, right, on board an IAF plane, that is an Indian Air Force plane. The idea of colonialism and slave trade, right? The microplastics from science and technology. The recent Supreme Court ruling on the Chandigarh mayoral polls, the elections to the post of mayor that were conducted and the quashing of those elections by the usage of Article 142 and the issue of IMF and the remittances. So let us quickly move on to the very first question. Consider the following statements regarding the relics of Lord Buddha being exhibited in Thailand. The relics being transported to Thailand were discovered at a site believed to be the ancient city of Kapilavastu in Bihar. The relics of Lord Buddha and his two disciples, which are relics from Madhya Pradesh, Sanchi, are also part of the exhibition. Kapilavastu was the first identified through an inscribed casket found at the stupa site in Piprava. Okay. So if you look at the concept underlying it, Buddhism is one of the favorite areas of UPSC. You will find plenty of PYQs based on various facets of Buddhism. Relics is one of those aspects. Then there are the subsects of Buddhism, right? So while remembering this, I always suggest a tree mapping approach, right? Wherein you open up threads and then subdivide them into its subparts. That ways you can see the path being traced, also which thing falls under what head. This helps you remember the holistic picture. As far as if we look at the format of this particular question, it is framed in the how many, not which. That means it can be any of the statements. You need not be, the question is not concerned with the fact that you deem the first statement as correct, second as correct, or third as correct. It only needs the number. And therefore, this makes the part vague. And hence, the skilling that is needed for this is the fact retention. And over that, fact correlation. For example, relics and the location. The prominent Buddhist sites. This you can easily remember through maps as well, right? Similarly, there can be questions on, let us say, Jainism, Sufism, Sikhism, etc. All right. So that is in the nutshell the story of this particular question. Now let us examine every statement. The relics are being transported to Thailand that were discovered at a site believed to be the ancient city of Kapilavastu. Basically, that transportation for Thailand for a 26-day exhibition is the news in focus, and based on which this question has been framed, right? It is about a month-long exhibition that is happening. These relics are preserved at the National Museum of India, right? So this statement is correct. This statement is correct. Second statement. The relics of Lord Buddha and his two disciples. This is important. It is not just the relics of Buddha, but also his two disciples, which are relics from the Madhya Pradesh's Sanchi, are also part of the exhibition. That is also correct. Next statement. Kapilavastu was first identified through an inscribed casket found at the stupa site in Pipravaha. This statement is also correct. This statement is also correct. If you look at the origins, it dates back to 1898 when they were unearthed from the site in Bihar, believed to be ancient city of Kapilavastu. So that makes all the three statements correct. And hence, in this case, this is option C. In this case, the correct option to mark would be option C. Option C. Let us move to the next question. So, colonialism and slave trade. The news which made it to the fact was because of the Yale University. Right? The Yale University, you are aware that Yale is one of the top-notch universities of the world, part of the larger Ivy League bracket, right? And it has recently apologized for its role and links with the slavery. Now, let me tell you a story related to this news. Actually, Elihu Yale, on whose name the university is named, and he was a patron of the university as well, he was a British civil servant in India, and he actively indulged in the slave trade. And that is why such an apology has been issued. So if you look at the concept, it is the colonialism. But if you look at the PYQs related to history, the UPSC is increasingly exploring the subaltern point of view. That means beyond the usual. Right? For example, if I talk about the slave trade, you had the Kongta Maru incident, right? Related to Indians then and the relationship which was happening abroad. So questions on these areas can also be asked. But more specifically, the depth and the focus is subaltern. It is not asking what is Kongta Maru incident. It will ask a facet beneath that. And hence, this aspect of our discussion, where to focus, is very, very important. Now, the correct approach to solve such questions is linkages, right? From bottom up. When I say bottom up linkage, this is a clear part of skilling, which is deduction. Examine a fact and trace its linkages above. And this skilling part is very, very important, because without deduction, without linking the invisible, you will never be able to decipher the correctness of these kind of questions. If you look at the format is again vague. You have to determine how many and not which. So that makes the question more difficult. Therefore, this deduction backed by solid logic or logical reasoning is important. Let us look at the statement. India was a part of the Atlantic triangular slave trade. No, that is not correct. If you look at the slave trade, it was largely the Americas, the Caribbean, right, South America, etc. Okay, so India was not the part. Elihu Yale brought slaves from India and shipped them to British colony of St. Helena. That is correct. That is precisely the reason. And he earned a big fortune out of this slave trade, right, which as per modern standards was a reprehensible practice. And hence this apology has been issued. Next statement. In 1807, British abolished slave trade throughout their empire. That is correct. However, the slaves in the colonies, excluding areas ruled by the East India Company, were not freed until 1838. So this is a perspective which gets very little highlight or limelight from a candidate. But now, like I said, the subaltern school is heavy on the mind of UPSC. So therefore, it is important that you look at these facts. So out of the three statements, two are correct, and hence the answer to mark for us would be option B. Option B. Moving on to the next question. It is about microplastics. Well, plastics are all around us, and recently it was in news that microplastics in bottled water, they have percolated to that level and they are underestimated. And University of Columbia conducted this study that already we knew that the bottled water contained certain level of microplastics, but the levels were being underestimated, and this brought it into the news. So the linkage you see with regards to entities, if we talk about microplastics, similarly it can be quantum particles, right, or some kind of cells. Similar questions can be asked based on study and linking them to concepts. Right? Hence, a key skill which is needed is the concept and entity relationship. A key part of the approach is to build that relationship so that you can deduce the correctness of the question. If you look at the format, it is in the statement 1, explain statement 2, vice versa kind of a format. That means the reasoning should bind the two statements. Therefore, this correlation should be focus, apart from, of course, the correctness. Okay, so that is the entire idea. Now, let us read the question. The statement 1, microplastics are plastic particles with dimensions ranging from 1 nanometer to 1 micrometer. So this is a fact, a concept. When you deal with micro, what is the dimension? So this is correct. Statement 2, traditional. So when we have statement 1 as correct, now you can use the elimination. Okay. Where statement 1 is false, you can rule out option C. Now let us look at the second statement. Traditional single particle chemical imaging techniques such as Fourier transform, infrared spectroscopy, and Raman microscopy are highly effective in studying the chemical composition of microplastics beyond microscopic scale. How microplastics are studied? This is a part of the topic of microplastic and the application part in science and technology, which is mentioned in the syllabus. So if you look at this statement, while the Infrared spectroscopy and Raman microscopy are commonly used techniques for microplastics. They have limitation in studying the chemical composition. So it is not just talking about their physical structures or presence, it is talking about chemical composition. So on this technical fact and the application of science and technology, this statement becomes incorrect. You cannot study chemical composition through the use of these techniques, and hence the second statement is incorrect. So we are clearly left with only one option, that is D in this case. That is D in this case. Alright, hence the correct option is option D. Option D. Moving further to the next question. Alright, so the news which led to the formation of this question is about the Supreme Court quashing the Chandigarh mayoral polls. Recently, these polls made quite a controversy, with parties like Aam Aadmi Party, Congress alleging that there was a malfeasance. And Supreme Court actually used the Article 142. So questions related to articles are very common in the preliminary examination. So underlying concept here is the constitution itself, or the articles of the constitution, the important ones. So the approach should be that you should have a glossary of such important articles. For example, 356, right? Article 356 regarding the powers of the governor, etc. So any or many articles can be asked. It can be asked in a match the following format. Which article does what? Right? So the knowledge of these articles and the skill of retention is very, very vital. So while approaching these questions, you have to utilize this skill. Also, add on to that the deductive logic, because often the statements are based on interpretation. They might not be the exact statement from the Constitution. Therefore, these aspects are important while approaching this particular question. Right? If you look at the format, again, it is one explains two kind of a format. So this correlation has to be established between the two statements, just like in the previous question. So let us look at the set of statements. Article 142 empowers the Supreme Court to pass any decree or order necessary for doing complete justice in any cause or matter pending before it. That is the precise explanation, right? And hence this is correct. The powers conferred by the Article 142 are limited by other provisions of the Constitution. No, that is incorrect. The focus is on complete justice. Okay, the focus is on complete justice. The scope of Article 142 is expansive. Okay, so it provides unique and extensive powers to the Supreme Court, and it is not constrained by any procedural laws or statutory provisions. And hence this statement is incorrect. Since we have the first statement as correct, second statement as incorrect, the answer to this question is option D. Option D. Moving on to the last question for today. The topic is based on IMF and remittances. So recently there has been a surge in the outward remittances, and obviously institutions like RBI play a key role. Okay, and they follow certain standards to map, because otherwise it will be difficult to actually look at the remittances, the inward, the balance of payment, the inward forex, and the outgoing forex. So there has to be a standard, right? And it is based on the free on board standards of the IMF. And hence these things are linking. So a key skill regarding this is interrelatedness of entities in the similar arena. The approach that you need for such a question is to link facts. Which entity is slotted under which entity and how they are linked. Okay, so more than deduction, it is the interlinking skill that is necessary. Also, if you look at the format is very traditional. Which? So every statement and option matters. Also, the keyword here matters. If this becomes incorrect, the options simply twist. And often candidates actually fall for this trap. Right? Similarly, there are multiple things related to foreign exchange, balance of payment, IMF. Okay, for example, you have the IMF quotas, etc. that can be asked in the examination. So this is a conceptual question based on a current affair. So always remember the focus and the locus approach I often talk about. Let us look at the very first statement. Free on board is the recommended basis for presenting imports and exports of goods according to the IMF balance of payments manual. Like I said, it is the standard practice so that multiple countries we can have a comparison. This is correct. Remittances have positive impact on the trade imbalances. No. Remittances are part of the current account and do not directly impact the trade imbalance, which includes the goods and services. And on that count, this statement is incorrect. Out of the two, the first is correct. Hence, the option to mark is option A. Option A. So, this sums up the MCQs and the revision of current affairs through them. Right? You can find all these topics and more in our daily compilation of ThinkQ of current affairs. A link for the same will be provided in the description. That's all. Thank you.